Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, today on the channel, we are taking a detailed look at the Unreliable Wizard. This is a new game that was recently delivered from Kickstarter, a new small box game, and I was a backer. And hey, look, it has the Dice Tower seal of approval. I guess maybe the Dungeon Dive should have a seal of approval for these kinds of these kinds of adventure games. But this is design and art by Kamibayashi. Travel the world, cast spells, slay the demon lord, save the princess. This is a solo only game. It takes about 20 minutes to play. So we'll be taking a detailed look at this, and we'll take a brief look at the Unstable Spirit Towers expansion. And so here we have some of the game set up, and you'll see a little bit of everything that you get in this this box here. So yes, I was a backer. I can't remember if it was a Kickstarter or GameFound. It was some kind of crowdfund, but I know it did really well, and I know a lot of people are enjoying the game. So in this game, you will take your little wizard meeple here. I love this little wizard meeple. I really do like the kind of pixel art in this game. It's a little bit of a different kind of pixel art. It's a little more primitive. I would say something like the Commodore 64 or Intellivision, or maybe even ColecoVision style pixel art. And your wizard will be exploring this 3-part hex map as they work their way through various terrains such as volcanoes, deserts, plains, villages, jungles, cities, oceans, labyrinths, and finally the demon castle. And when they reach the demon castle, they need to destroy this demon lord Terra. And of course, that is easier said than done. So the map is always laid out in the same configuration. You have the end map here, the middle, and the beginning. And there is a quicker mode that you can play if you only have a few minutes. And then you can use just these two maps here to play a shorter version of the game. So that's kind of cool. I do appreciate that. Let's set up the full game here. Okay, so there is your overland map. On the overland map, you will notice some numbers. When your wizard moves into those spaces with a negative number, they lose that number of hit points. And then there are also some encounters that you will have to fight monsters with or on when you land on those hexes. And you can also gain rewards in those hexes, and you will need to gain a lot of rewards to do well. And then there are also these village spaces that you can pass through, and when you do, you gain that number of hit points. So the bulk of this game is kind of more of a resource management game than it is an adventure game. But you will take your little wizard meeple and put it on the beginning spot there. And now we have a bunch of rewards and a bunch of enemies. We do have a card here where we will keep track of our Unreliable Wizard's hit points. And you will start at 30. And you'll keep track using this line here on this card here, which is your Grimoire. This is your Grimoire 1. And this tells you the kind of spells that you can cast by combining cards in a different way. And your starting hand, your starting deck of ability cards contains a green spell, a red spell, and a blue spell. And so if you cast one of those, you will do 2 points of damage in red, 2 in green, 2 in blue, and so on. As you gain more powerful parts of your spells, you can combine them together to do additional damage. There is also a Grimoire 2 that you can get as a reward that will allow for even further kinds of combinations to deal multiple types of damage. So you can combine things to deal red and green damage, or green and blue, or blue and red, and so on. So your Grimoire is used to tell you what kind of spells you can cast and to keep track of your hit points. And then we also have this tracker card here that we will use to keep track of the enemy's hit points. And then this card here will be used to keep track of the additional bonuses that the enemies get to their defense, depending on the terrain that they are encountered. And then finally, here we have this skill or this flow of battle card, and it reminds you of the steps that you take when you initiate combat, as well as the skills that you have, because you will be able to gain traveling companions, and those companions will add skills and they will add some damage. The skills are abilities. And then you can also sacrifice your companions to gain additional health when your unreliable wizard dies, when they take too much damage. So after you've taken all of those cards out and set them aside and set up your map board here, then you have your additional abilities deck. And in this abilities deck, you have your advanced spells here. And so when you get those, of course, you can then combine the top part and the bottom part to do a super spell. Or if you have this kind of gray augmented magic, you can combine it in a three-way to do an even more powerful spell. So we have advanced spells. We have advanced blue, red, green, and gray. And then we also have our traveling companions. We have a paladin, a porcupine, a hero, a monk, and 2 princesses, and our grimoire 2 that allows us to cast more complex spells. So at the beginning of this game, you will take one of your princesses and you will discard it. I think I will discard this princess here. And then you will take the rest of your abilities here and you will give those a shuffle. And each one of those traveling companions does have 2 different sides, and you can pick which side you want to use, and then you just slot that under here under your skill card. And that will tell you the ability that they will give you and how much additional damage they will add to your attacks. But let's continue to mix up these abilities here, and then we deal 4 on each side face down. And so these are abilities that we can unlock during the game as we progress up the map towards our way to the Demon Castle. And then we have 2 additional cards, and these go into our hand now, so we can take a look at these. And we have two companions, so we can actually add both of those companions to our skill card. Now we can choose. At the end of every combat turn, the Demon Lord loses 2. So this is really good for when we reach the Demon Lord. This princess will help us do damage, and she will actually add a point of red, green, and blue damage to each of our attacks. So that's pretty good. Or after when you draw your cards, protects you from losing up to 2 health when you draw magic cards. As you use your magic in this game, each time you draw a card from your hand, it costs a point of health. So you are kind of draining your wizard's health to cast its magic spells. So that's pretty good too, because you can draw up to 4 cards, and you almost always, I've noticed during this game that when I've been playing it, you almost always want to draw as many cards as you can. So that really helps a lot too. But then this guarantees some damage. So there are some good choices here. All of the abilities are usually pretty good. The last time I played with this princess, I think this time I'll try this princess so we can get some of that initial damage going. And then we have our hero here. So the hero can either allow all terrain types to cost 1 point of damage to move through. So that's pretty good, because as we start moving up here, you will notice that, you don't take a lot of damage as you're going through the villages or the jungles or the plains. But as we start getting up into the volcanoes, we start losing 3 health, and then 2 health in the oceans, and then 3 health in the labyrinth. Or at the end of every combat turn, the enemy loses an additional point of damage. I think I'm going to take this card here. At the end of every combat turn, the enemy loses 1 health. Now that can be a little deadly, as you'll see. Sometimes the enemies, sometimes you don't want them to lose a certain number of hit points, because it might push them into a kind of fired up frenzy mode. And we'll take a little bit a look at that in more detail. But we'll combine, now we'll have this as our skills here. So we'll have that, I'll set that down here. And then we have our 3 starting cards here for our magic, and we'll give those a shuffle. And we'll place that just off camera down here. And then on top of these additional ability cards that we can unlock, we will place enemies. And we have yellow enemies and red enemies. And the enemies here will have certain number of hit points. So this enemy starts with, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hit points. And you will keep track of the hit points from the enemy using this card, and you'll slide down as the enemy takes damage. And below the number of damage, or below the number of hit points they have these segmented numbers here. And those dictate how much damage they do to you if you fail to kill them. So, as I said before, sometimes you want to kind of manipulate how much damage an enemy takes so you don't push it down into one of these fired up frenzy ranks there, or these modes. So when we first face off against this enemy, it'll do 4 points of damage to us. But if we can keep it here, it'll do 1 point of damage. But if we block it, if we knock it down to here to where it's almost dead, it gets kind of fired up and it'll actually do 5 points of damage to us. When we kill the enemy, we gain 4 points of health after killing it. This is kind of a little potion. This enemy here is a Yabi, and it is that kind of enemy. And you'll notice that some of the enemies do have this certain type, and those types will correspond to certain abilities that some of your companions might have that might help you defeat those types of enemies. And then here we also have our defenses. So the Yabi has 1 point of defense against red, 2 points against green, and 3 points against blue. And then depending on where we encounter this Yabi, it will add that additional defense. So if we encountered this Yabi in the plains, then it has 3 points of defense there. All right, so we have yellow and red. We shuffle up the yellow. And then the yellow, we deal 1 here, and 1 here. There really isn't any indication as to why you do that. It's only written in the rule book. I wish there was maybe a little kind of yellow symbol here that showed that. Oh, actually, there is. I just noticed that. Hey, that's what those are for. There we go. 1, 2, 3, like that, I believe. Cool. I was wondering what that little thing was, and I finally figured it out. So there is some a little bit of some cryptic iconography on the cards that it doesn't quite explain, but you can kind of suss it out if you pay attention. And I just wasn't paying attention before. That happens, right? And then we'll place the rest of these here like that. And they kind of line up to these white lines that are on there. They don't have to, but it just kind of gives a nice clean look. A really clean looking game. I think it has a great look. I think that the look of the game is kind of one of my favorite things about it. Okay, so we're all set up. And now we can set off on our adventure in order to kill the demon lord. And so we're starting down here in this jungle. So the first choice we have is we can move into either one of these jungles down here, but it will cost us 2 hit points to move into them. And I think we'll move over here to the village to take out this yellow enemy. So I'll move here. So I'll lose 2 hit points. So I'm now down to 28. And then I'll land on this village, and that doesn't cost me any damage to move into that village there because we do have an encounter. And we are fighting against a Ra. So the Ra, when we defeat it, we will gain 1 hit point. The Ra has 3 hit points. The Ra is very strong against red magic, not strong against green magic, and a little strong against blue magic. But we are facing off against this Ra in the village. So now it is even more, has more defense against red. So it has 4 defense against red, and it has 3 hit points of damage. It's going to do 2 hit points of damage to us if we fail to kill it. So we have 3 cards in our deck here. We can draw up to 4, but we have to leave 1. So I can only draw 2 cards. So I'll give these a shuffle, and I will draw these 2. And because I've drawn 2 cards, I'm going to lose 2 points of damage here. Okay, so those are our hand of cards. Now, the first thing we do in combat is we activate abilities. And so let's see here. Our princess gives us at the end of every combat with the demon lord, so that ability doesn't apply here. And our hero, at the end of every combat turn, the enemy will lose an additional 1 point of health. And we have a guaranteed 1 point of damage of red, green, and blue because of our princess's power there in combat. So let's see what spells we have. So we have a red spell and a blue spell. So the red spell, we have 1. So that will allow us to do 2 points of damage there. So I lost 2 points for going through the jungle. down to 28, and then 2 more points for drawing 2 cards. And so we do 2 points of damage, plus the 1 from the princess is 3 points of damage, but the Ra blocks 4 of those, so we do no damage to the Ra with our red spell. With our blue spell, we do 2 points of damage as well. We have plus 1, so 3 points of damage. It blocks 1, so it takes 2. So we'll go down 1, 2. It has 1 left, and because of our hero's ability at the end of combat, it takes 1 point of damage, and so the Ra is defeated, and we go back up to 1 point. We gain 1 point of damage for defeating it. We put the Ra back here to show that we've already faced off against that monster, and we can't fight that monster again. And let's see what we gain. Okay, so we gain a monk. So we gain another travel companion. So the monk we have can do a red point of damage or 2 green. And then this type of enemies lose 2 at the beginning of battle. Or we can do 1 red and 1 green. And then it also protects us for 1 point of damage when moving through volcanoes. Actually, I think I'm going to take this monk here. So I will slot that under our cards here. And now we are traveling with a princess, a hero, and a monk. And when we go down to 0 hit points, we can actually sacrifice one of our companions to gain some health back. Okay, so let's take our cards here. We'll shuffle them back into our hand. And we will continue on. Let's go here. We'll lose 1 point of damage. Actually, let's cut across here and lose 1 point, and then we'll go into this jungle here and face off against this creature here. And so now we have the dodo. The dodo has quite a few hit points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll gain 2 health if we defeat the dodo. It blocks 1 red, 2 green, and 1 blue. We are meeting it in the jungle there. So we have 1, 2, and 2 defense. Okay, we'll keep that like that. And it is this type of enemy. And the monk does not do any damage, or the monk does not do additional damage to that kind of enemy. So the monk is not going to help too much in this combat. We will shuffle our spell cards. I will take 2 points of damage to draw 2. We have a red spell and a green spell. So our red spell does 2 points of damage, plus 1 for the monk, plus 1 for the princess. So that's 4 points of red damage. And the dodo blocks against 1 of those, so it takes 3. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then I do 1 point or 2 points of green damage because of that spell. And the monk adds 2, so that's 4. The princess adds 1, that's 5. The dodo blocks 2 of it, so I take 1, 2, and 3. It is dead, so we have defeated the dodo now. We gain 2 more points of health. We place the dodo there, and let's see what we get. Okay, so now we have our blue advanced spell. So now if we draw our blue card here, we can combine the basic with the advanced in order to do 4 points of damage as shown in our grimoire. And basically you just kind of keep going like that. You're moving up, you're trying to plan your route, maybe hitting the villages to gain more hit points back, to heal yourself. You really do want to try to fight against as many monsters as possible in order to unlock your abilities. There's our second grimoire that gives us more combinations. A porcupine, maybe up here we find the paladin. But some of the enemies get kind of interesting because you want to balance how much damage they're doing. And then finally here, when you reach the demon lord, the demon lord is pretty powerful. It blocks against 5 points of damage for every type of magic, red, green, and blue. And so that can be, you really want to, you need the ability to generate a lot of damage when you're facing off against the demon lord. And so, yeah, that's basically the entire game. As far as I go, this game has kind of fallen a little flat for me. You guys know that I love small box adventure games and small box dungeon crawl games. I probably spend more time on the Dungeon Dive talking about small box games in this space, in this thematic space, than most comparable channels. I love games like Adventure of D and Tin Helm and Dust Runner. Mini Rogue is one of my all-time favorite games. Rogue Dungeon, I absolutely love. I can't wait for the new Kickstarter for that to deliver. I like games like Gate and Gates, and of course, the all-time classic here, Iron Helm. So I love small box games, but I feel like all of these small box games just give me a little bit more of a sense of adventure because there are more things to do, more ways to engage with the game other than just combat. Even in a really, really small game like Tin Helm, you have some traps to deal with. You can go to those special places and have some choices. There's a little more variety in the way that you can engage with the game. Same as in Adventure of D, you can get different items and have different kinds of encounters. Mini Rogue has traps and NPCs and merchants and secret passages that you can find. And so does Rogue Dungeon. Rogue Dungeon also has all of that kind of stuff. And so I like when they put all of those things in a small game that simulate that kind of bigger game experience. And they don't take up, it doesn't take more time, it doesn't take more effort. They just give me more of a sense of adventure. Unreliable Wizard is pretty much 100% focused on combat. The only kind of conflict that you have in Unreliable Wizard is through fighting, is through casting spells and damaging enemies. I wish there were other things to do within the game. I wish there was other kinds of conflict, maybe other choices, maybe just some narrative choices or something. I think the system is pretty good, and I think I understand why a lot of people are really loving this game because of that just kind of really dry, straightforward card play that a lot of people like. It just isn't hitting it for me. Now, the expansion here, the Unstable Spirit Towers, it adds a little bit. You do need the base game because you need some components from the base game, but it adds some crystals that you have to keep track of, and then a couple items like a white staff, a white robe, a black robe, and a black staff, and some different types of enemies that you kind of combine to make into more powerful enemies. I think you have like a head, torso, and feet or something like that. And you do have to deal with some crystals, and the map is a little bit different, but it still is pretty much focused on combat, on conflict being only combat. And I'm not sure if I like the Unreliable Wizard enough to spend the time to learn and play its expansion. I haven't decided yet. I've played this game a handful of times, and it just has fallen flat. The one thing that I absolutely love is the look of it. I like this kind of primitive pixel art. I think we don't see a lot of games with this kind of pixel art. We do see a lot of games with the more kind of high def 16-bit or 32-bit style pixel art. But this kind of real throwback to like Intellivision or ColecoVision or Commodore 64 style pixels looks really cool. And I was excited to get another small box game to add to the shelf. But this one just, fell flat for me. I wasn't feeling it. And I almost didn't make this video because I wasn't getting jazzed up about the game at all. But I thought I would add my opinion to the sea of opinions on Unreliable Wizard. I'm pretty sure I'm an outlier. I'm pretty sure most people are loving the game. I mean, it did get the Dice Tower seal of approval, and I know people see that and they're like, oh, this must be a great game. And yeah, usually they're right, and maybe they are right, and I'm wrong. But that is just my somewhat informed opinion on the Unreliable Wizard. So, all right, well, hey, let me know if you guys are playing this and loving it. And the kind of the cool things that have happened. There are some cool things that happen. You do feel that tension as you are working your way up to that Demon Lord, and you're finally facing off against the Demon Lord, and maybe you just happen to have the right combination of cards and companions, and you can leave the Demon Castle triumphant by destroying the Demon Lord. And I'm sure that feels pretty good. So, all right, you guys. Well, hope you enjoyed this look at Unreliable Wizard. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.